she's not able to give me that, is there something going on?
Yeah, she probably has no idea what she's supposed to be doing in her social work session. Because a lot of that, if the social worker doesn't know how to truly engage her, she'll do her darndest to go through the motions and do what she thinks she's supposed to be doing, but will really have no sense of what just happened.
Okay.
So what she's going through has to have some meaning for her, otherwise she's not going to retain anything to bring home to you to talk to you about that day. And you also have to take into consideration whether your child actually enjoys being at school. Because if they see the school experience as something to survive, they're spending a lot of their day tuned out. They're not going to be looking for these little nuggets of information to bring home to mom or dad at the end of the day. However you can, get them used to starting to look for things, and you do this by asking them 2 questions at the end of every single day. You said, so tell me what went right today and what could have gone better. Because you always start with the positive first. Because how do these kids tend to look at life in general? Negatively. They specialize in identifying the problem, but have more difficulty identifying the solution. Why do you think that is? Why is that the default perception?
My son's very negative, period. And part of the hardest thing for me to deal with is that he's just always negative.
What do you think, Zach?
Well, negativeness is not a, well, it is an often thing, but I have had a really hard past and I have been negative from my actions.
You're saying you were negative because of some of your experiences? What were some of your experiences?
Well, the teachers didn't treat me the way I wanted them to. Sometimes I would get out of hand. And if they treated me better, I would have been more calmer and ready to do my work.
Bottom line, people get a sense of their own self-worth and confidence from feeling competent. When you have a child that is trying to navigate the world that doesn't make sense to them, and you put them in the one environment that consistently does not work for them, which is a social environment, the primary reinforcement they get is, you're not doing it right. So when their experience of the world is, I'm messing up all the time, and I'm constantly being reminded of it. You're weird. Why do you do it that way? Why do you talk like that? Why are you doing this? If their primary feedback is criticism, what else do you think the world is going to provide you other than negativity? And if that's your primary input, that's how you think the world works. The world is working against you. It's not working for you. That's where the negativity comes from. However, if you take the revolutionary approach of saying what went right today, not only do you pose the possibility that it can go well, you can start having the dialogue about what good looks like. Because a lot of kids on the spectrum who have IEPs that are all about no longer doing certain things, no longer shouting out in class, no longer fidgeting, they learn to define good as the absence of criticism. So I ask these kids, oh, how do you know you had a good day? I didn't get sent to the office. So if they don't have a good day based on something they did right, it's by refraining from doing something wrong. And a lot of parents don't realize, and a lot of teachers don't realize, that this is the child's experience. They think, oh, the behavior intervention plan is working wonderfully because the child's not acting out. No, the child is avoiding criticism. The child is not embracing a positive behavior. That's why the child holds it all together in school and goes home and melts down. And then the teachers say what? It's fine here, no problem. Never underestimate the inner strength of the human being in their own protection. Secondly, you want to avoid criticism, you want to avoid punishment, you will give every ounce of your being to do whatever it takes to avoid that. And that's what these kids do. That's what holding it together is all about. Because they can't take one more criticism. All that anxiety builds up because it's so hard to do. Then they go home where it's safe and let it all out. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. I would melt down before going to school. I would come home at lunch because my grade school was just down the street from my house. I'd come home and melt down and be begged not to be taken back. Several times a week, I was told, oh, he's just sensitive. You know, he's just a very fragile child. I was on the spectrum and nobody knew it. You want to say something, bud?
Well, I know that, well, a lot of people can judge you as weird, negative, but you cannot change a person. They can only change themselves. And people may have their strengths and may have their weaknesses, but you can never judge them until you get to know them.
Very good.
What grade are you in, Zachary?
6.
Very good. He's by age 5th grade, but by intellect 6th grade. And he's also, what, 11 going on 30? Is that what we say? That's good.
What triggered your self-awareness enough to start going into the psychology and while you were in high school there?
Well, when I was going through chemo, because of my age and the fact that I was just coming out of high school, the friends that I did have in my life didn't know how to deal with the cancer, so they stopped talking to me. And the other people who might have known about it didn't get wind of it because school was over. There's no way they could find out. I was in isolation. I had no way to distract myself. The way I went into myself by necessity. I couldn't find control out here, which is what a lot of people on the spectrum like to do. They want to control their environment. They want to control the people. They want to dictate how everything goes. I didn't have that luxury. The environment was always taking control away from me. So I had to go inside and find self-control. And I really had to delve deep inside my own thought processes and learn my feelings in order to do that. Otherwise, I would have lost my mind. So I did that by necessity. And part of that process, when I came out of it, I had no friends. When I went into remission, I learned, okay, well, I'm not going to die, I'm going to live, but my life is in shambles. What the heck do I do? So I found my way to a couple social workers who really helped me get a handle on my anger and helped me start to find little openings in myself to start trusting people again, to think that not everybody would abandon me in a time of need. And these people were such wonderful, caring influences in my life that I knew I wanted to do that. I wanted to help other people in that way, a way that could let me use my mind and find solutions to thinking problems, which was also my special interest. The girls always thought I was a great listener, when I was just interested in listening to them think. I just like how the mind organizes itself. Some kids like to line up cars and stack things. I like to see how people line up their thinking.
And that's, I think you said this before, maybe you answered this, that just happens to be your thing, because I notice kind of the opposite. The asking type people I know, my son and probably my husband, that would bore them to death. So you're saying that's just you particularly.
That's my specialization. As opposed to somebody that wants to memorize all these statistics. That's what I handle here.
Yeah, one of the things that we really struggle with, and any advice would be helpful, is, you know, you talk about letting your kid get out of the comfort zone and try new things, etc. At the same time, what I don't see out of our son is the ability to know when he's in trouble and change. You know, so then he ends up really kind of crashing and burning and holding it together. And so, how do you find the balance between how far you push outside the comfort zone and how much, you know,
Well, tell me what you mean by knowing when he's in trouble.
Well, let's say, you know, he just gets to, he's in a class where he's working along and he just starts to have some trouble, get discouraged, and then the next thing I know, he's just avoiding the whole thing for weeks on end, and so he's gone from a good grade to a terrible grade, and, you know, he doesn't have that switch that says, oh, I'm in trouble, what I'm doing isn't working, I gotta try something different.
Well, he knows it isn't working, that's why he's shutting down.
Right.
What he's missing is what to do about it.
Right.
And when you have somebody that's very subjective, they don't know how to work with, where do they think the solution lies?
With somebody else, usually.
With themselves,
Well,
because they don't know how to work with. If they can't find a solution themselves, as far as they're concerned, the solution doesn't exist.
yep.
So the difficulty is helping them understand how to connect, that other people actually have the information. So the difficulty is sitting down and saying, when it's not working for you, what are your options? Because he knows it's not working, just doesn't know what to do about it. So the skill set in asking for help is what needs to be built up in him. You've been so patiently waiting here.
Well, I know one thing. If your child comes home melting down, you shouldn't just send him up to his room, ask him what's wrong, and do the best you can to solve the problem. And if you don't know what to do, just calm him down. If he has like a video game player, let him play his video game till he finds his calm spot.
Do you find that you're able to talk, like if
Well,
I mean, in your dad's case, you
my-
probably have a good relationship. Sometimes when my son's upset, he doesn't wanna be, he's not able to explain what's wrong. So, and me as his mom, I wanna find out what's wrong and try to fix it, but we kinda have that disconnect there because he's not able to explain it to me.
There's one thing, as I was saying in response to your question before, there is one thing your child always knows, is that something went wrong. Something didn't go the way it was supposed to. So if you can really ask a very targeted question, something as simple as that, what didn't go right? And that gets them to tune into the fact that, okay, I didn't like something, what was the thing I didn't like? That seems to be a much easier question for these kids to answer. Because even though it might be in their subconscious, they're walking around with a set of rules in terms of how things are supposed to work. Things are supposed to be my way. Things are supposed to be predictable. Things are supposed to be comfortable. They may not know that these rules exist, but they definitely operate according to those things. So when these kids get upset, it's because a rule was broken. It's important to help them find out what the rule is.
You know, just working with so many students, it's like when they get to that point that they're upset, we feel like it's gone too far. How did we let it get to this point where they're upset? But how do you problem solve with somebody about what could possibly happen when they are just in the here and now and can't think about how it could be or what could happen? So how do you get those problem solving skills?
You think you can answer that? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I know the student is in trouble. Don't try and aggravate him and get him even more angry. I've experienced them when out of control. Don't put them in timeout. Just ask them what's wrong. Tell them to lay their head down on their desk. Either just rest on their desk so they can calm down. Ask them what's wrong and could make them feel better.
When in a school setting, in the setting that the child melted down in, that's the setting that helped create the meltdown. Trying to solve the problem in that setting is like standing in the middle of a burning room saying, how'd this fire start? When you should be getting the heck out of there. So the first rule is decompression. Get them out of that environment, let them wind down a little bit, then have your conversation. Because a meltdown, an anxiety attack, is a state of disorganization. So if you're trying to have a pointed conversation with a disorganized child, their mind is everywhere. They're not going to answer a straight question. I don't care how good a question you ask. You need to let them de-escalate first. When they're a little bit more together, a little bit more grounded and centered, then you can talk about what didn't go right in that situation. And like Zach mentioned, help them find a solution. Because the one thing that they need from you the most is to know that you get it. You get that something didn't work, and you're going to be with them to help them find a solution to it. As opposed to, what are you making such a big deal for? You're overreacting. What's the problem? And that kind of stuff is condescending. It's invalidating. It just reinforces to that child that people don't get them. People don't understand them. The more you can be with them and let them know you're on their side and you're going to help them find out how to make the situation work better, they'll be more comfortable in your presence. Oh, all these hands at once. Sorry.
My question is similar to his. My son isn't ASPE, he has other disabilities, but he won't take help. He will not ask, I mean, he's doing poorly in a class, and no matter what, he wants to figure it out himself. He just will not ask for help. He won't take help. Can you explain why and what to do to try to gain it? I mean, I've tried all sorts of myself, other tutors, just will not take it.
Let's see what Zach has to say.
Well, just let them know that you are on their side and ask them what it will take to calm them down.
Well, in terms of the help issue, as it pertains to people on the spectrum, again, it comes back to the working with. How do you ask for help? How do you know, first and foremost, that you even need it? Because I've seen it in IEPs before where a child will ask for help when they need help. And I'll ask the child, you know when you need help? No.
Well, we
Because
got
of
that
self-awareness,
grade,
isn't it?
you know, and it's close to failing, and they realize it's close to failing, but
But in that instance, clearly something else is more important than the grade is.
Right.
So a lot of these kids will value asking for help as a reinforcement of the fact that they are needy.
right.
Because if you teach a child they have disabilities, they have weaknesses, they are so cognizant of that, they don't want to out themselves to the peers they so desperately want to be like. They do not want to out themselves to people that could possibly criticize them. Doesn't matter that everybody else asks for help. They can't ask for help because it has incredible social consequences. So they'll take the bad grade to protect their pride.
So what to do?
I was going to say something about her question earlier. Well, if your son tries to get violent with you, don't get violent with him at all. Just ask him what would calm him down. Don't try and restrain him. That'll make him angry. Because I have the same thing as him, and I've been through very violent past, and I've still been able to get through them with the help of my parents. And if he has like video games, let him play those, and maybe he'll decompress.
You tell Zach likes video games?
As you know, I bought myself games.
Are there any times in his life where he does ask for help?
Yes.
And what are those situations?
He will go to the algebra teacher and ask for help. He connects with her, but that is the only teacher. He won't get help from resource, and no.
Why the algebra teacher?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's something to find out. Because if he does find value in asking for help in that setting, we need to know what about that setting works for him. That's not working in other settings. Because if that's a skill he's able to do but not generalized, then there's something he's perceiving in those other settings that is dangerous, that he's avoiding. Otherwise, he'd ask for help.
One of the themes that kind of cuts through a couple of the questions been brought up is around, at least it seems to me, around motivation. You know, any experience that you have in working with kids of this age, you know, kind of going through school and how to broaden their thinking of their own concept of what could motivate them or what does motivate them in terms of, you know, seeking change or seeking help or reaching out to, you know, to others, as you were describing, as that being a challenge. I mean, it's Zachary, I think, said it well. I mean, it takes, you know, somebody has to want to change themselves. Right?
Basically, there has to be a compelling need to engage other people. So long as all of their needs are met, without them having to do a whole lot of effort to get it met, there's no need to go outside the comfort zone. I said it starts with parents who just kind of instinctively meet the child's needs. I've heard parents say, oh, I know what my child's thinking before they say a word. I can just read my child's face and know what they need. That's wonderful, but you're also preventing your child from having to ask for anything. It's important that your child at all possible turns ask for what they need. That's asking for help in its most basic sense. If you see a child reaching for the salt at the dinner table, don't just reach over and give it to them. Say, oh, did you want something? Could you let me know what it is? Oh, I'd like the salt, please. Oh, thank you so much for telling me you need the salt. That way I can understand what it is you need and I can give it to you. So you talk all that out, let them know what they just did, how it helped them get their needs met, and how it helped you understand specifically what it is they needed and how you could help them meet their needs. All those little simple teaching moments that everybody misses.
I have a question about, I'm not real comfortable with deciding when I should let him go forward and fail or stop him from failing. And I'll just use two examples. He wanted to take Latin next semester. Well, he's having a real difficult time with English, you know what I mean? So I didn't think it was a great idea. But as soon as I suggested maybe we should look at another subject matter, oh, you don't think I can do it, you think I'm a failure, you think, you know what I mean? It's the defensive. I just wanted to save him from what I thought was a disastrous decision. Or should I just not have said anything and let him find that out on his own? And in the same vein, he wanted to go out for the basketball team. And I know he doesn't have the skill set that he would need to make the basketball team, so I'm trying to save him the embarrassment of being caught on the first day. Or should I have just let him gone through that whole experience and found